changes to the. But the clock's running at 2 minutes per person. All right. We got 2 minutes.
I don't know how long it's going to do. Yeah. Raise your hand if you don't have a copy of the software. Raise your hand if you don't have a copy of the software.
Yeah. Do you want to follow? Yeah.
No, I actually
Guess I could have left open.
All right, let's wrap it up. Hopefully you're all best friends now if you weren't before. Okay. So kind of vis-a-vis this is a really crappy framework that I like to use because I like bad frameworks. They usually generate more good thoughts as people tear them apart. But this is kind of, in my mind, this is kind of how most data products function. You have a data aggregation task. There's value built there. You've got a data aggregator here. I'm sure some of you, that's a function of what you do. You can ship that off, that's a great product, and you're done. Sometimes you have to do a little analytics around the product, the data that's been aggregated. Maybe the data that's being aggregated is just public data, right? But you're giving interesting insights around visualizing it, around interpreting it, around situating it so people can use it. That's cool. That's kind of what we did for Skull Candy, right, Ben? We aggregated a bunch of data that you guys, ideally you actually have access to all this data anyway. It's yours. It's your social feeds or those kinds of things. They were able to summarize it and wrap it in such a way that, some interesting insights were derived around that, and also help to envision kind of possibilities of what could be done by taking data they already had and data they already had command over and kind of lobbing it all together and see what would happen. What's important, at least for me, to remember over and over again is that as we get down this, and this is not just simply recommendation engines, when we talk about predictive analytics, it's deriving some form of recommended action. Like, this is what's going to happen next. Recommended action is to be believed. The problem with over and over again, we skip these steps because you actually have to take a every step. I don't know how many of you, I don't suppose this ever happened to any of you, but you've been in a meeting where you're delivering the work product of the last few weeks or months, or maybe some awful longer term than that. And some business-oriented person or IT-oriented person who hasn't been brought along for the ride torpedoes the entire effort by saying, I don't trust the data. Damn it. It's like, that was a problem 4 months ago. Like, we have these discussions. You remember those meetings, right? I don't trust the data. And like, the entire thing just blows up or implodes. So it's important to remember, as we build these data products, every one of these steps, you need to get buy-in. You need to check back with the stakeholders and say, like, we agreed to get this much data. These are the data points we went after. I know I went kind of on a tangent and got all of the GIS data for all the time zones in the entire universe. Is this still valuable? No, we don't actually need all that, but this other part is really valuable, right? And it's good to be checked, right? It's like, okay, sanity check all along the way. Same thing happens, you go blow a wad on some grandiose analytics platform, and it's total overkill. Got some good friends up at Omniture. Boy, they had some churn problems early on. I'm sure they still have some, right? Where you sell people on these hot analytics, but getting the data into the system was hard. They only sold them 8 hours of implementation time, so they thought it was going to be that simple. The account calls them and says, "Are we ready to re-up?" They're like, "Re-up? Are you kidding?" Right, so you gotta get people's buy-in along the way, so that when the recommended action, even if it's just becoming more contextually aware, like there's people that are like rooting for you and saying, yes, this is good, we should keep going with that. Okay, so we want to get you an easy to use, kind of end scale NoSQL Hadoop or architecture that you can play with today. And then the same ideas and same concepts and same platform that you're dealing with, you just push right up to AWS. Right, to Amazon Web Services. You put it into your own Hadoop cluster that you build on EC2, or you could just use Elastic MapReduce, same thing. And so we'll talk a little bit about how that works, and we'll get you guys running really quick on installing some of that software so we can play with it. We'll talk through the use case of Skullcandy, and we're really fortunate to actually have Ben mentioned here from Skullcandy. Ben, I'd love for you to join either this table or that table, so you can. So just jump in. I'm sure no one will kick you out. If they do, just go to the other table. They'll be nice. Okay, and kind of how we were able to derive initial value for them, and kind of what things are going to matter for them long term, and how they run with this, more advanced analytics and data enrichment in what they do. And then we're going to talk about just, kind of problem use cases. What kinds of data do you go after, and what kinds of architectures are useful for that? And it'll just be kind of a meld as we're going through some of these problems. So, before we get going, just kind of show of hands, and I'll be up front, so you don't have to raise your hand and be embarrassed. Who's here for the specter of big data? And who's here kind of looking for more meaningful value from deriving meaningful value from the data that you have and kind of more the analytics side? So those who are still strong enough to say, no, big data should grab, raise your hand. You're here because you're really hot on big data. Hot on big data, okay, sure. Some backgrounds, they don't care if I'm going to make fun. No, that's good. Because big data is useful, right? Big data is kind of this nebulous term. I don't know actually what it means. But the idea of providing and getting more data into your computing is a great thing. And to Chris's defense here, person in the back, is a 2 genomics brand startup. They have plenty of opportunity to bring in new data, right? Because they actually have now really the platform for analyzing how to get hold of systems. For you, what's kind of what do you see your hot on big data? What's the thing that you most like to see happen in your country?
The project I'm working on now is moving from Teradata to Hadoop-based thing. So it is application, it is business.
Okay.
But kind of moving away from the strictly SQL somebody constraining analysis on that into the broader space.
Okay, so that's really cool. So you're kind of opening the door for getting that deeper expertise around analytics, right? Because for me, the analytics, there's always such a need for domain expertise in what you're doing, right? And Teradata with their kind of free package, this, that, and the other, kind of seems no need for domain expertise without kind of specifying the end. Cool. All right, so for the rest of you, where are you at? Are you looking to, do a raise of hands? Who's looking for kind of possibilities versus who's looking for, what's the next step? So those who are more like possibilities, we can show our hands. Possibilities, okay, good. So, yeah, 30%. Who could describe it as kind of next steps? It doesn't have to be all of you, but next steps. Okay, so about a quarter of you. Okay, cool. So we got a good smattering of people. The rest of you, it doesn't sound very interesting. You can get out of the day. Save some money on parking. No. Where you can hang out. We're not going to send it home. Okay. So we'll gloss over the upfront contract. Hopefully it's been established. We're going to be digging in deep into how to value to your business. And we're not going to be talking about, we're going to try not to get too distracted by the latest hotness, right? So we've done introductions. So let me just kind of buzz through a couple of things. First, when we talk about big data architectures, I'm no expert. I'm not a DevOps guy. That's not what I do. But these are kind of things that I've touched, things that I've run into. And this is kind of the framework that I hold in my head when I think about classic analytic architecture. So when I think analytic, I'm always thinking the long and overlap, right? Like, it's information that if we can get it is so valuable, it doesn't matter if it takes a day or a week or a year to find it. That's the long and overlap. For instance, In my grad work, I was doing some genetic analysis. We spun up Mary Lou over at BYU, trying to crunch and derive some information about relationships in taxonomy between species. This is a thing where people will spend their entire lives concentrating on finding the use of two different things or tasks. So the fact that spinning up Mary Lou and painting it for 2 weeks solid doesn't matter. There's no timeliness problem, really. The insight is so cool, so useful. For lots of people it is, right? And for your business, when you think of analytic architectures, you should think of things that you can go after, where if you can surface insider information or calibrate the space that you're working in, reduce the cognitive load. We don't need real timeliness, right? It's just like, great, let's get it. And then you can talk about delivery and how you're going to expedite or deal with the fact that it takes forever to process. So we talked about the data, the collectors, storing the information, processing that information. That's typically where machine learning happens, is the batch processing. We're training things, trying to understand it, we're refining. I found this doesn't always happen, but it's great to think of having a live store. Because more often than not, maybe this has never happened to you, but it happens on occasion, you come up with something really cool, and then someone says, I need that all the time. I'm like, oh, that's good, yeah. Okay, that job took a long time to run. I can get it to like, I don't know, maybe every 2 weeks. Because I've got other things I'm working on too. Right, so a live store. Thinking right now, but how are you going to cache the data? Is always useful, and that's usually, it doesn't have to be a nailed down right at the top, but as you talk to, to your business counterparts, to sales, marketing, what have you, and CIO, whoever it is in your organization, or those people, those stakeholders, how are you going to deliver this data on time? So often it looks like a live store. You throw a JSON string somewhere in Mongo or somewhere else. Or you use an architecture that is pretty good at getting data in a timely fashion. Right? So the columnar databases often can be tuned to do that. Graph databases are kind of interesting. I've not played a whole lot with them. I played with one called Titan. Spun up a recommendation on it. It was kind of an interesting exercise, like doing almost like an ALS algorithm on graph, using graph algorithms. It was really interesting. And it was actually pretty straightforward. So, they can kind of function as live stores, depending on how you think about it. And then good old Elasticsearch, great. The other thing is, like, can you deliver this data? Now, pick up Alvin a little bit. Alvin is pretty good with R. He can do a lot of cool tricks with R. R, for those of you who don't know, is a statistical platform, right? It makes life really easy for the analyst. But it is almost by definition a silo. Like, it has to have all the data go in, and then it plays with it. And then delivering data out of it can be kind of hard. Though Alvin does better than most things that called shiny. But it's kind of hard to create a service around R. There are companies that kind of do that, but it's kind of hard. So think about, how are you going to deliver this data? Most of it kind of keep it up, and you're going to store it somewhere or surface it. How are you going to give it to people so that you get used? Because if it doesn't get used and it's just trapped in a graph somewhere, it probably will die. And then, what does that utility look like? We don't spend a lot of time. We won't spend any time here, but, people like D3 visualizations, you can, NVD3 is a nice one because it's stupid simple. And then if you really want to get crunchy, you can dive a little deeper. Okay. So that's analytic. Really the only, in my opinion, the only other template is stream analysis. So you got this one where you worry about timeliness, and then the other one where you just deal with it in time, just in real time. So you take your raw data feeds, you don't have to figure out is it truly raw, or do you have to transform it, and then you just stream the sucker through it, and you either, just send it off to different places, right? Or you can do machine learning, and both Storm, Twitter Storm, right? It's an architecture. that you can use on JVM, and Spark. That is kind of a new hotness, right? It's a shiny thing that we're chasing a little bit. But you can bolt on machine learning into these two architectures, and they have pretty straightforward libraries that you can play with. You can also use Weka if you want to create your own streaming process and start to derive insight around it and actually productize things on the fly. So, in my, I'm sure there's other architectures, but in my opinion, it's either analytic or it's stream. If you want to just, OLTP, with the standard transactional database, that's cool too. I don't know what that looks like. So again, yeah. Sorry, I'm feeling a little. I really want you guys to win. I really do. Like that, to me, that's in my professional life and just in kind of how I hope to make it down in society. I want to see other people. And that usually looks like alignment. And I have here a big spongy spot in my heart for all of the runs and the engineers in this world. Put ourselves out there, and we actually, we don't just bullshit people all the time, like sales. Right? And sell vaporware, we're often the bacon in the eggs breakfast of business. And so damn it if we're gonna just waste hours of our life that we'll never get back doing shit that doesn't matter. So we're gonna get top enough business to the people that you interface with so that when the decision is made, you are informed. Don't just go off on a rabbit hole and hope that what you're doing is going to like you know this is going to like and hold people accountable to keeping that communication channel. That's it. Okay. You guys, you'll have these slides. I don't really, most of you have gone through this. This is kind of just stuff that's useful. This, again, just to help you with alignment, right? Categorizing the business problem that you're being asked to solve. Is it a product-oriented, customer-oriented, operations-oriented kind of problem? If it's product-oriented, it's probably around a marketing type of problem, conversion, that kind of thing. If it's customer, it's probably sales or retention-oriented. If you can talk about these kinds of terms with your business counterparts, go a long way to clear communication channels and knowing exactly when the needle moves and who gets a bonus and when you get a raise, right? So, let's see. Examples of what those kinds of problems are, right? Marketing kind of problems would be keywords, these kinds of things. Sales kinds of problems, these are kind of, things that could be helpful, right? Converting people, A/B test the universe, offers, targeting, that kind of thing. Churn and retention, yeah, there it is. It's on there, look, I remember. Okay. Now, operations, these are failure rate, yields, expected time, durability kinds of problems. Optimization problems happen in operations all the time, ERP kinds of things. Optimization problems are hard problems. And they take a lot of careful thought to figure out how you're going to get to optimizing stuff, but they can be really rewarding and fun to work on. There's some interesting cool tools you can use. So, yeah. And then you also get fun things like, Uber problems, the traveling salesman. These are impossible NP hard problems that often happen in operations. But if you get a chance to work on them, and you can actually identify something singular that's going to happen when the needle moves, it can be awesome. Your business counterpart might come to you with this kind of thing, right? This is a business model on a piece of paper. That's what this is. Okay, so I don't know if any of you are in kind of the startup mentality and have had a chance to look at things like business canvas, but this is a business on a sheet of paper, right? You got your value proposition, your customers, and the partnerships that are helping you deliver that value, and the things related to what that is. Hopefully, if you weren't here in the morning and you're truly just on the technical side of this, and somebody comes to you with this, you can ask them meaningful questions around what are we concentrating on? How are we going to be able to measure this? All right, so if we have a technology that is going to be feeding our revenue structure, are we going to be okay waiting every quarter to find out if something happened, or do we need to know every day, or those kinds of questions? So asking meaningful questions vis-a-vis the business architecture, as it were, is really useful, and hopefully it'll be useful to you. We won't get into that with you too much. This is just kind of, I'm hoping you guys have semi-photographic memory. When someone comes to you with these kinds of things, you're like, oh yeah, I saw that one time, tell me more about that. And hopefully it'll open a conversation that's useful and meaningful for what you're doing. I really actually don't want to spend any time on these things, but you'll have access to these slides, so you'll be able to interface meaningfully with your counterpart. So this is what we built for Skullcandy. It was a visualization and tool around competitive landscape, vis-a-vis their Twitter feeds, coming up with mentions and personas, people mentioning snowboarding, beats, yoga, those kinds of things, and trying to help them see who their customers were and how those customers saw their competition and how they were all perceived by their customer base. So it was kind of fun, right? It didn't get very far, right, Ben? We didn't get very far up the analytic, kind of complexity level with this first pass, because the problem was still just kind of up in the air.
Yeah, no need to. I mean, what you guys put together is definitely actionable on its own, and I mean, it's something we definitely. I'm here to learn how to operate this thing.
Yeah, but it started you guys thinking, right? Like, and now I think you can feel like, that kind of analytic sophistication. There might be a place for it because you've actually got kind of a mind around what's going to happen. And yeah, so maybe, would you agree that you kind of have to pay the piper on these kinds of things, right? You kind of have to do the data aggregation, the analytics stuff. You got to get buy-in before you can go to the directors or or to the CMO across the hallway and say, hey, we should trust this thing. We're going to turn it on and we're going to track whatever, traffic and those kind of things, right?
Yeah, working on buying inside in parallel to learning how to do inside.
Very cool.
It's we're gaining some traction, We've got a budget to throw at it for the next couple of months, and really it wasn't on our roadmap this year at all. And it's a big part of my roadmap now.
Awesome. So there you go. We'll call it. Well, seriously, that's a success, right? We got Ben excited about it. We got Skullcandy excited about it. That's good for everybody. When you can go from weren't thinking about it to, hey, maybe this could be a crucial component in how we do what we do. So, all right, Nelson, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks. So before I get started on this, we passed around some jump drives that have Hadoop in a box. Did anybody not get it installed? If you could just help get them up and running. And what we're going to do is we're going to, yeah, he's going to bring it over here. Yeah. This isn't it. It's those ones. So what you're going to do is you're going to get VirtualBox up and running, and that should be on the jump drive. And you should also have a VM for virtual machine for the Hortonworks sandbox on that same download. Cool.
Drag and copy it first.
Oh yeah, just copy it over first, and then yeah. Okay. So before we get into the technical though, let's take a minute just to thank our sponsors and those that made this possible. Right, we haven't done that yet. First, I want to be the first to thank the Leonardo for this awesome facility, which they volunteered for us, and it's just great. I'm so grateful for that. And then I wanted to turn the time over to our other sponsors, Stan, for Amp Allegiance. Thank you.
I'll speak for both since I'm not here. Amp was here, but unfortunately he's having a baby, so you might know his neck. He just got the call on Thursday. Yeah, congratulate him next time you see him. So Amp Staffing is a staffing and professional services company. They're available here in the Valley. I have one of their cards if anybody's interested. Nick helps put on a lot of the big day events as well, so does myself. Allegiance also helps sponsor the event today. Allegiance is a voice of the customer intelligence company. It helps you make your customers have a better experience by taking survey feedback and other feedback that you provide as well bringing it all together into a big data solution and then reporting it back to you so that you get a better customer experience for your customers. And then the last kind of sponsor is Utah Geek Events. Utah Geek Events is kind of the backbone of all of the big data stuff, trying to get it all going, the not-for-profit behind everything. So you'll see a lot more about Utah Geek Events coming up. There's stickers here. But as we go through the summer with the competition, we're going to have more and more events like this. Definitely check out uhug.org, Utah Geek Events. We'll be announcing all of them there. And whenever we can Google Hangout or spread it out everywhere, we will. Sometimes it'll just be, there's an event going on here at this time, and we may not have it behind it. Hopefully everybody can make it. The whole goal this summer is to collect and clean data about the big data competition and then compete on it later on in the year. So it should be a lot of fun if you're getting into big data, if you're learning about it. There's not going to be a better spot to do it than this summer with all of us. You're going to learn a ton of things this summer because of that. And a lot of it's because of great people like Alton and David that are coming to present and talk about this. If you have any other questions, I'll be right here and I'll be recording this next up.
Yeah, so thanks again, and Allegiance, for your sponsorship, and thank you, Pat, for all that you do. Okay, so if you have this downloaded, you should be able to get to the VirtualBox VM Manager. Raise your hand if you can get this far. Who has this? Is there at least one person at every table? What about back here? Do you guys have? Are you guys getting it? Okay, good. So once you have VirtualBox Manager up and running, you should be able to simply just open your Hadoop VM just by double-clicking it. And it'll bring it up a little screen like this, at least on Windows. And I just reinitialize the MAC IP addresses, the MAC addresses of all the cards, and import it. And then it'll show up here in your list of virtual machines. As we're doing this also, it might be very beneficial for you to follow along on this GitHub repository. If you point your browser to github.com / Alton Alexander, my name, / hands on MapReduce. Yeah, this GitHub will have several code snippets and hints as we move through these hands-on MapReduce examples. Oh, if you're not on the wireless network yet,
Transmission is probably the best one. There should be a little sheet at your table if not.
yeah.
Transmission is probably your best bet.
Then you use the details on the page.
Yeah, and then just guess. Basically log in to guess.
So hopefully after the introductions, we're able to buddy up with the other people at your table and you feel like you can ask questions there. Feel free to stop me too as we're moving through this. At least this initial part, I like to keep everybody on the same page and then so that you have the kind of direction that you need to really run with this first steps when you go home. Okay. So if you have Oracle VirtualBox Manager open and you have the sandbox installed, you can double-click the sandbox and start it. And after it goes through some startups, right, starting up a virtual machine, you'll get this home screen for the sandbox, which basically just points you to a web browser for accessing the GUI, Hortonworks Sandbox GUI. Or you can also log directly into the machine using the SSH provided with the password Hadoop. So I went ahead and pointed my browser to the path for the sandbox, and I get this welcome screen. Can you raise your hand if you were able to get this far? Good. What about at this back table?
Still starting for me.
Oh, okay, good. What about over here? How are things going? Cool. Cool. So I'll just give some filler comments. I'm definitely not a sponsor or anything of Hortonworks or any representative of them. And in fact, for me, it's sixes between them and Cloudera. Really, for me, Hadoop is, I like the phrase that it's like the gateway drug, the big data. So we're going to start with those basics, right? Kind of get us all a taste of it, and then everything kind of breaks off from there, from HDFS and so forth. So this sandbox is neat because it has in it the latest version of Hadoop. It also comes with several getting started tutorials, which are fun to follow along with. For example, you can get an overview of Hive and Pig, and in here there's even tutorials how to get ODBC working. You can import data directly into Excel. You know, kind of at your pace, I recommend these. They also have several new features which are exciting, and then diving right in. And today we're actually just going to dive right in. So once you get up to this pace, or this spot, go ahead and navigate to this, to the actual sandbox. How are we doing on our progress? And I know this initial part I'm kind of taking it slow. Is there anybody who is falling behind, who feels like they could use some help or has some questions? Just raise your hand. Okay. There's a couple. Let me answer a couple questions. I'm going to come up to the screen. Don't worry me. Don't mind me. There's a control here.
No, you're totally.
We're getting everybody up and running.
Just remember, I haven't signed up for it. I don't know what they're for.
Let's see. Oh, you stuck with something?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say, I mean, I think we, are we going to have like a PDF or something of that, like a step-by-step?
Yeah, that's what this is.
Okay, great. Because I don't have like I can use my laptop, so I'm just kind of trying to come up with home.
Oh, yeah.
But I want to do it
When you walk home?
Oh, yeah, when I get home. You know, so
Yeah, we'll include this with the PowerPoint.
Yeah, we'll send out a follow-up.
excellent. Okay, that'll be
And
great.
of course, you can always just reach out to us. I mean, we're students in this too, so we'll learn together, right?
Yeah. You're at least like 9 or 10 steps ahead, though, so that you won't look back.
Yeah, don't make them.
Okay, cool.
Like maybe a half step ahead.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking that it might be good just to kind of
watch you go through a bunch of this
That's
stuff.
it.
So, and that way,
And I think we're going to lose everybody probably in 5 more steps.
right,
And then-
right.
At least I know that everybody has what they need to take home and
To try.
right.
Yeah,
And not feel sick and tell their bosses, look, I did something.
right.
Like, remember in school,
Yeah,
you were in math class.
exactly. This is get your paper out, get your pencil out, right?
That's right. Third way through the semester.
Write your name on the test.
Oh, I'm the only one who's still working. Everybody else is checked out. Like,
Damn it.
oh, darn it.
Yeah.
Or the risk where you're like, you're so busy taking notes that you don't really understand what's going on. And then if you just actually watch, and then you go, I get it. And then you go home and you can't remember because you haven't taken notes. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Try to join us.
Maybe while that's happening, I'm just going to copy the files to my home computer. Distro running. And then the rest of it
Anybody else have want some extra help, or are we? Necessary. Oh yeah, it's right here. That. And then it's. Oh, it might. Yeah. 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 Your IP address might be different though. It's Hadoop. Lowercase, yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and continue actually. If you're following